EQ video tip. I'm your host, Eric Forsetter. As always, we're so glad that you can join us today for another incredible episode. Before we jump into this week's tip, let's review the goals of EQ video tip. Welcome back. We've got a great show on tap, and it comes to us from Jan Rizzi, who talks about why vulnerability now, which used to be considered a weakness, is actually a strength when it comes to leadership. Because vulnerability, or thinking that vulnerability is a weakness, couldn't be farther from the truth. And Jan talks about her experiences as a CEO and how when early in her career she thought by showing her emotions she'd be viewed as someone who is too emotional and doesn't have the chops to handle it in the world of business. Instead, what she talks about is how showing and regulating emotions, but being able to empathize, be part of your team and show your vulnerabilities, actually taught her that being vulnerable is better for the team. It helps the team out, it helps them grow, and it earns trust with everyone. So let's jump into several things that Jan talks about. Tip number one, get at the heart of social connections. And what Jan says by this is, early in her career, she felt nervous or anxiety to actually go out and say, hey, I have a toothache, I gotta go see the dentist. She thought the response would be, well, that's what Saturdays are for. And she felt apprehension saying, hey, I've got to be at one of my kids or one of my family events, because she thought that others weren't experiencing it. But what she came to realize was that everybody is going through that same anxiety that, hey, I'm missing a family event, I'm missing something for a friend, I'm missing my children's birthday party or soccer game or whatever it might be out there, or something at school. And it's important to understand that and recognize that there are emotions that everybody is going through, whether your first time into the office and you don't know how to talk about those types of things, or you've been in this career for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it might be. Everyone has those type of emotions, and it's important to connect to people. You might talk about it differently, but at the end of the day, the result is that you have to build that trust and earn that respect that everybody understands that they have a family or they have other obligations as well. And we need people to be healthy and understand that family time and personal time is just as important as the work time. So take time to understand and really go through and express those vulnerabilities that you're feeling. It may be expressed differently, but it's important to understand those pieces when making that connection. Tip number two, even the boss makes mistakes. And this is a key one, because it's important to show that you make mistakes. And not only do you make mistakes, that you own up to them and say, hey, let's correct them. And here's where I went wrong, or here's where I could have done better. When going through that, it's important to take that responsibility, because not only does it show that you own up to your mistakes and you're not blaming the team for it, but it gives the team the ability to think about, if they make a mistake, how you're going to react. And not only how you're going to react, that it's okay to fail, because everybody in life fails, and that at the end of the day, by failing more, we're going to succeed. So take the time for you to show when you make mistakes, earn that trust with them so that they feel that they can safely make mistakes. And at the end of the day, the culture will drive more innovation, because people will not be afraid to fail. They won't sit back and be frightened. Instead, they will try and experiment and grow the team. Tip number three, raising others can actually help raise the performance of the whole team. And Jan talks about a colleague of hers who she could watch all the time, where all he would do is recognize and nourish the team and make it one, as opposed to just letting people flounder out there. This is especially true of tech teams that are dispersed, or even sales teams that are remote all over the country, or even today we have a lot of remote workers for everything we do because of COVID and virtual office space. It's important to figure out ways to connect the team, to acknowledge what they're doing, and then also to ensure that they don't feel disassociated from the business, because it's important for people to understand the macro picture and how what they're doing is a why in the big picture of what the office or the business is trying to do. By giving them that why, by giving them a purpose on the team and understanding how to blend that all together, you're supportive to one another. And not only are you supportive to one another, it affects the development of the entire team so that everybody is trying to drive together to help achieve that one goal. Our last tip, regular sessions bring you closer. And this is really key because in companies, it's hard to avoid silos. They just happen naturally, as marketing may not work with accounting or sales may not work with finance. But at the end of the day, we have to bring everybody together, and we have to find mechanisms to do that as well. So what Jan recommends is set up opportunities for teams to talk together, but also individuals as well, so they can learn to trust one another and work with one another in a more productive way. And in those meetings, it's okay to be vulnerable and remind people about that. Remind people about it's okay to make mistakes, and also to challenge in a respectful way different ideas so that we're bringing the best out of each and every one of them. The thing that's important is at the beginning of every meeting, repeat that, and as well at the end, so that people understand this is a place where it's okay to be vulnerable, to share things, even to say, on a one-on-one, hey, are you having problems with something at home, or do you need to get to a dentist appointment? Whatever it might be, those things will bring the teams closer and ultimately lead to a better work environment and a one with more trust within the team. That concludes this week's EQ video tip. Hopefully you found it helpful with the tips that Jan provided for us. As a quick recap, here are the things that Jan talks about in her article. So that concludes our EQ video tip for today. Try incorporating some of these tips into your daily routine. But remember, use what works best for you and personalize it for yourself. Thank you always to our great research team for providing us with some great tips today. As always on EQ Video Tip, we want to end with gratitude. So thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. Here are some resources that you can use if you want more information on EQ going forward. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.